Leila Hazou, a Green Party candidate for U.S. Senate. Why are you running for this office?
Well, I decided to run primarily because I am a Palestinian American, and given what's happening in Gaza, seeing that none of our politicians are really listening to the people, when most people want this to stop and want us to do something about it, something more than what we're doing, obviously, I decided to run and hopefully try to represent people that have the same values I do.
Well, how would you contrast your position on this war from any major candidate? Say Bob Casey. Let's start there.
Well, Bob Casey has been clear that he's not even really calling for a ceasefire. I asked him directly to his face about a ceasefire, and he said he wasn't. And that was in March. And I don't think much has changed. And I think that's true for both parties and both candidates. What I would do differently is I would sanction and place an arms embargo on Israel immediately. Given the devastation that we've seen, the war crimes, the ICC's rulings, the ICJ's rulings, and multiple humanitarian agencies' findings. So I would stop arming them immediately. And we're just not hearing that from any of our leadership in Pennsylvania.
Now, Casey is the Democrat in this race. How about the Republican Dave McCormick? How might you contrast your position with him?
I actually haven't looked too much at Dave's position because I think it's on this issue, it's the same as Casey. On the other issues, I clearly differ from him completely because I was always more left-leaning anyway. So a lot of the pro-life and all that stuff is just, complete contrast with myself. So very different in that way.
Now, you said a couple minutes ago that Bob Casey was not listening to the people. So tell me more, expand on that. What are they saying that he's just not hearing?
Well, when we look at the polls, about 70% of Democrats are saying that they want an arms embargo and to stop sending weapons to Israel. So that is a big majority of Democratic voters. And they're not listening to that. They just approved another $20 billion package to be sent, and they're not even talking about an arms embargo, let alone really a ceasefire. The ceasefire talk is, kind of pie in the sky, kind of this intangible thing that they're talking about. So I think that clearly they're not listening to what Democrats are saying.
How would you rate our government's handling of funding the war in Ukraine?
Well, also not great. I think we're much too involved in that. I think we're much too involved in wars all over, right? And we need to just stop doing that. And we need to maybe mind our business. Now, helping is one thing, but getting this embroiled and spending this much money on weapons and destruction is just not something I think the American people want or should be doing.
So let's turn away for now from foreign policy and wars in general and talk about the Green Party. What does it stand for?
Well, the Green Party is primarily about the environment. I mean, that's one of our hugest issues, right? Is moving away from fossil fuels and getting more into renewable and clean energy sources. So this is huge. And a big part of the party is the eco-socialist Green New Deal. And it's a huge, huge policy platform that's really well thought out and talks about, moving to clean energy and job creation and, just a full kind of picture of all of this and how we take care of each other, all the people in America while we're taking care of the environment, providing jobs through this and, hydroelectric dam energy and super rails and things that just are better for us in infrastructure and for people and for the environment.
And now that you're talking about the environment, how about natural gas drilling? And of course, we have fracking here in Pennsylvania. And where does the Green Party stand there? Totally
against it. Hate fracking. In fact, I was just in Dimock, Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago, talking to those folks, there's been documentaries on it and everything is so bad. They haven't had clean water in over 15 years. They can't sell their properties. Their beautiful homes they can't sell because there's no water still. And all of the heavy metals and the waste and all the chemicals going into the air and the water and the soil. So it's devastating on communities. And they're not the only ones that have been affected in Pennsylvania. So no, I'm totally against fracking. And
please,
I was just going to say, I know that it can provide jobs, so that's always a question. But if we move to green sources, there will also be jobs because we have to build that infrastructure as well.
Let's talk some more about the Green Party in general. And in order to give our viewers some perspective on where it fits in politics in general, in relation to the Democrats and the Republicans, where does the Green Party fit in relation to either of those big parties?
You mean like on a left-right spectrum?
Definitely sure, let's start there.
Definitely left, much more progressive, much more about the people and the planet and, peace, anti-war, much more taking care of our citizens, the grassroots, no lobbies, no super PACs, no big money, no corporate money. So the Green Party is left of both by far, I would say.
So tell us about the first time you learned about the Green Party and why it fired your imagination.
Well, I've actually known about the Green Party for probably 12 years or so, but I was a Democrat.
So the day came when you had to make a decision. I want to know more about that day.
Yes. Well, that was probably in December or January of 2023 and this year, because I had kind of been buying into that mindset of, other parties can't really gain traction, and it's because of the way that our system is set up, and, they don't let third parties in, and there's no funding for them, so it's really hard, right? So the day came when I looked at my people in Palestine not being even considered by any parties other than the Green Party. The Green Party was the only one really standing up and speaking out on behalf of Palestinians. So as I was thinking about all of these things in my head of I'm calling the senator's office, I'm calling the representatives' offices, I'm doing all of this and nobody's listening to me. And these are people I voted for. I'm not going to vote for them anymore. So then I said, well, why don't I just run against them? Because if I feel this way, there are other people too in America and in Pennsylvania that feel this way.
Did you say that you've been a member of the Green Party for 12 years?
No, I've known about them for 12 years.
I see.
But I just became a member.
So the actual change was more recent.
Yes, much more recent.
So what I'm trying to find out is, how do you feel the Green Party feels relevant now in 2024, as opposed to, let's say, when you first learned about the party 12 years ago?
Well, I think at the time, I was holding out hope, unrealistically, that Democrats would keep moving left. The thing about the Green Party is they are very left, and they always have been. They're not, you don't have to push them anywhere. They say what they stand for, and they mean what they stand for, whereas mainstream parties kind of will tell us what we want to hear around election times, but their policies don't really reflect any change that they're promising. So I think I just got to the point where I was sick of trying to force the change, and just became the change.
Have you noticed any Green candidate making progress? Maybe a candidate who's run in the past that you can look up to and maybe model your campaign after?
Well, I think we're getting there. I think there are some now, but again, it's been very hard for third parties because it is always grassroots. And the mainstream parties, mostly Democrats, because they're supposedly left, right? So they're closer to the Green Party, I guess. They try to keep everyone off the ballots. They make it really difficult for us to get on the ballots. You have to have, in Pennsylvania, 5,000 signatures. We can't just get on the ballot like a normal mainstream party can. So there's all these things put in place that just make it much more difficult. Now, people, there are a lot of Green Party people that do keep stepping up and keep trying to run and keep running and doing things, and I do respect them, but it's just the mainstream parties make it so difficult for us. I'm hoping we can change that.
Well, let's talk more about that task of getting on the ballot and getting 5,000 signatures. Just how big a task is that?
It's pretty big, and we actually got about, I think, 10 or 12,000 signatures this year. to get on the ballot.
You always want some extras just in
right,
case, right?
And we even had extras still in case some of those were thrown out. But I think that is also indicative that Pennsylvanians want change, because the amount of signatures we got this year was definitely much higher than 4 years ago. So Pennsylvanians, I think, are there. They want other options.
Now, I'm interested how you accomplished that. Did you go door to door, the internet, both?
Well, we have to get physical signatures, so we went to some events. A lot of us went door to door, and it's all grassroots. Again, all of these people volunteer their own time. They go to local events. They go door to door. They go now with protests, with pro-Palestine protests. They go to protests. They talk to people. They tell people what the party's about, offer them another option. And it's a lot of work. I mean, it was a lot of people on the ground all doing this.
We're going to explore your position on the issues, Leila, a little bit later. Just for now, I'd like to find out about what kind of work are you involved in now? I want to know what kind of life experience you bring to this candidacy.
Well, right now, I am currently a small business owner in Pike County in Milford. I make soap and candles and creams and all that good kind of stuff.
Do you have people working for you? How big is that?
I don't. It's just me. It's a tiny, small business, literally. So it's just me. I'm shipping, packing, creating, selling, manning the shop.
Why did you choose that particular kind of business? I'm interested.
I chose it because I used to be in the corporate world. I worked for a big investment bank for many years in New York City. And I just kind of got burnt out, honestly. And I wanted to be out of the city. I mean, we didn't live in Manhattan. We lived on Staten Island or in Jersey, but it just got to be too much. I was just working for the man, working for the man for all those years. And I got to travel and I, made a nice living and everything, but it just wasn't worth it. So I told my husband, we're moving to the Poconos. Let's stick it to the man, moving to the Poconos. And then I started making soap, and I had to open a business because I couldn't use all the soap.
Well, tell me briefly, Leila, I mean, how do you make these products appealing to the customers? I mean, I understand there has to be some variety, right? So tell us about the thinking behind that.
Well, I make really good soap, and I make really pretty soap.
Like different fragrances, for instance?
Different fragrances, different stuff in it. Like I make luxurious soap, and I make amazing candles. And yeah, it's just me. It's an outlet for my creativity. So I try to make everything pretty or as, visually appealing as possible.
So the whole thing's online, I take it?
Yep.
Now, how can this life experience that we've just discussed and this insight, and I understand you have an education in the form of an MBA, how can any of this make you a good U.S. Senator?
Well, I don't know if it can, because I know politics is very different than real life, but that's what I like about me running and about people like me running, is I'm just a person. I'm a working American that, has never had anything handed to me. I did, work my way through school, then my MBA.
What did you do before the MBA as an undergrad?
I was a psych major for undergrad years ago, but then, I never really pursued that further. I was always in a corporate environment. But I think that not being a politician is my strength. I think common sense, and I think compassion, and, just getting back to the basics of being an American person that, cares about people and the planet. And I think that's all important. So
now let's get back to the issues, Leila. We already talked about foreign policy and about foreign wars. And I looked at your website, and I understand women's rights was mentioned on there. And what kind of change would you like to make in that area?
Well, I'd like to see us codify Roe. I mean, they keep talking about this. It's never been done. And, this women's rights keep coming under threat. And now with the Supreme Court, we've got it's more under threat. However, I know this is difficult because we haven't done it yet. We should have done it when we had the chance, right? But now Roe wasn't even that strong anyway. Like it needs to be. We need to really build this as a strong policy federally.
And that was overturned after 50 years.
Right. Because it wasn't that strong. We need to really have something down on the books that is solid, that, guarantees women have the right to do with their bodies what they want to do.
How about somewhat in the same arena, LGBTQ rights? That's mentioned on your website too.
Yes, same thing. I think we should do, the same thing. All of this should be enshrined in law to protect and really every marginalized group, right? We should be protecting. And I know that we do to some extent, but we need to really make all these things solid and like loophole proof and at the federal level.
And also another issue on your website has to do with what you called systemic racism. Where do you start?
Well, that is a little bit trickier, right? I mean, because it is so built in. But when I talk about systemic, I mean, things like the prison system and things like our judicial system, where minorities just tend to get higher sentences in a court. This is systemic. Where police tend to arrest marginalized people more often. This is systemic. We need to educate these groups and we need to change these things and we need to have more of community policing. And, the prison system is just out of control. But these sentences, there need to be guidelines where, you can't just sentence someone longer because you don't like the way they look or what class they're in. So when I say systemic, that's what I mean. That it's still so rooted that even everyday people don't even realize how ingrained it is in our system.
Any ideas for health care? We hear from our viewers all the time that prescription drug prices are pretty high.
Well, with pharmaceuticals, there are some options of doing like publicly owned pharmaceutical companies and making it publicly funded. And I think that's a great option and idea, but also, there needs to be caps, just like a lot of things need to be capped on how much you can charge. And as far as healthcare, everyone should have healthcare. It shouldn't even be a question, right? We should all have healthcare and we should have healthcare until we die. Everyone should have Medicare. As I watch both my aging parents, my father passed last year and had to be at home, and he had someone come like twice a week on hospice care. And the rest of the time, my stepmother is trying to take care of him. And it's just impossible for people to do this on their own. So we've got to do better. We've got to do better with our elderly and with everyone, take care from birth to death.
Now let's talk about something, Leila, that I think everybody thinks about probably every day, and that's the current state of inflation. Just how did we get to this point?
I don't know, but I think that COVID triggered a lot of things, which made everybody just kind of think, well, if we can charge that now, we can just keep charging it forever. But also with the whole economy, it's just, to me, insane that we spend something like $800 billion a year on defense and weapons. That is insane. That is literally like 6 times as high as the next biggest spender. It's absolutely insane. So as we're spending all this money elsewhere and we're getting more, our government is taking our tax money and getting more in debt and putting this money all over the globe to kill other people and do all these terrible things so weapons manufacturers can make profit. It just seems that something is seriously wrong here, and we need to start keeping that money here, and we need to make sure we tax corporations and, we increase the minimum wage, and corporations can't just charge whatever they want for stuff. And, there's so many things we can do. That's a whole huge other discussion, right?
Here's another issue, Leila, that's frequently in the headlines, and that's migration at our southern border. It's in the news all the time. So what do you see as the issue there, and what can be done?
Well, I think obviously we're a nation built on immigrants, so we need to allow immigrants, especially immigrants fleeing war or whatever devastation is happening in their countries, a lot of times that we inflicted upon them through sanctions even. So we need to be able to accept people. Now, I don't have the answer of how we make that more efficient, right? I don't have a quick, easy answer. I don't think there's an easy answer, but we cannot just refuse to let anyone into this country. This country needs immigrants. It's built on it, and they're a strong part of this community. So, we need people seeking asylum. We have to make the process easier, quicker, more humane, and we're going to have to deal with it somehow. So far, we haven't quite gotten it right, so I'm not sure, but we need to keep letting people in.
Let's go back to foreign policy, not about wars, but let's consider how the United States should go about having a relationship with China. And some of your opponents in this race mentioned this in some of their spots.
Well, I think we need to definitely start talking to China more. I think that demonizing any country is probably not the right way to go about it. I'm sure there's some kind of diplomacy that can be had there. And when we look at China and China's economy and China becoming such a huge player in the world, right, we're going to have to deal with them. And I think it behooves us and our economy too to do so, because the bigger the alliance with Russia and us being kind of blocking them out and blocking all these relations, I think that is going to have an effect on the economy too at a certain point.
What should we do, Leila, to help reduce gun violence?
Well, my personal thoughts there are that we need to, first of all, get rid of any assault style weapons. We need to ban those. We need to ban bump stocks. We need to ban all of that stuff.
We've had bans in effect and they come and go.
Yes. And when the bans were in effect, we didn't see the amount of mass shootings that we're seeing now. So we do need to put those bans back in. Now, I'm not against anyone having handguns or hunting weapons. I'm not against guns per se, but I don't think the automatic weapons are a necessity. Those should be strictly for military, and we could go into a whole other thing if they should even have them too. But no, I don't think civilians need those type of weapons. And of course, we should have stronger background checks and waiting periods, and all of those things that are just common sense things. But no, I don't think assault weapons are needed in the hands of civilians.
Now, you're a Green Party candidate, and maybe this issue a few years ago is something you might not have been paying a lot of attention to. But what I'm talking about is back in 2020, we had an election, of course, and election integrity was something suddenly people wanted to talk about. What were your views on that?
I think that was probably overblown. I mean, ballot access is definitely something that we need to work on, but the actual integrity of an election, I didn't think was questionable. And when I guess they had some of the companies do some assessments, there wasn't really any problem found, like anything major. So I don't think that that's an issue. However, I think we can certainly simplify our voting a lot better in this country, right? We should be able to do it online somehow. I mean, we have to have technology where we can do one vote, one person online.
Well, a few years ago, we added mail, of course.
Right. And that definitely helps. I think mail-in ballots are great. So, and there were no problems found with that in every case that was evaluated. So I didn't question the integrity of the election.
So let's just move into your campaign then, Leila. And I think a good place to start